All right, good morning, and this is still the AM show. This morning, as I indicated, we'll be taking you through the recommendations made by the EJURA Probe Committee following its inquiry into the violence in the Ashanti region town in June this year, which claimed 2 lives and left a number of people injured. So, apart from the recommendations, we're also looking at the findings because they've made some findings and would want to share that with you. Some interesting findings, I must say. So we also need to look at the terms of reference for the committee. It says conduct a public inquiry into the circumstances that led to the unfortunate occurrences at the EJURA in the Ashanti region on Tuesday, June 29. Inquire into any matter the committee considers incidental or reasonably related to the cause of the event and the associated deaths and injuries, and then submit a detailed report with recommendations for appropriate action within 10 days. That's the 9th of July. By the 9th of July. They were, of course, giving some more time after that. So let's look at the findings as we have them. And as you can see on the screen, they say, we note from the onset that an examination of the entire evidence obtained clearly demonstrates that the death of Mohammed Ibrahim, aka Kaka, served as the catalyst that triggered the disturbances which took place in EJURA on the 28th and 29th of June 2021, culminating in the death of 2 persons and injuries of 4 others. In relation to the events leading to the death of Kaka, then they brought in the wife, informed the committee that during the lifetime of her husband, he was very critical and through social media of the lack of development in EJURA. This, according to her, courted the anger of certain persons in the MPP, the party to which her late husband belonged. According to her, the husband informed her about the threats issued by certain individuals against him regarding his activities on social media. In her view, the husband might have been killed as a result of his social media activities. But then they also took note of the account, the eyewitness account giving, or testimony given by some other people involved. So Abewakas Umar testified and tendered 5 videos and an audio to support his testimony that the late Kaka informed that the MC of EJURA had directed his tax to warn Kaka. Essentially, so Abewakas was saying that, yes, as far as he's concerned, the Kaka was killed because of his activism. He talked about death threats that had been made on his life. But then the committee also says they looked at they thought that he didn't quite come clean with the committee. He says they found his evidence not so credible. In fact, if we can move on to exactly what they said about his evidence. But yes, they indicated, so let me just go to that. Committee notes that the authenticity of the videos and audio presented to it by Abewakas is highly in doubt. These videos only surfaced after the death of Kaka. The committee further notes that the wife of Kaka eloquently narrated everything she said was passed on by her late husband. In all these, she said she did not report the alleged threats on the life of her husband to the police. Neither did she give the names of the said persons who were threatening her husband to the police, although she claimed she knew the persons. The committee further received the evidence of one Sadia Husseini, a co-tenant of Kaka family. Her testimony was that on the night of 26th of June, she was performing ablution in her room, and when she heard the engine sound of Kaka's motorbike, she suddenly heard a noise which aroused her suspicion. Her curiosity led her to find out what had happened in the compound of the house. She stated that she saw the elder brother of the late Kaka towards the direction of the late Kaka called Baba Idi, dragging the deceased Kaka towards the direction of the general bathroom. Just then the light went off around the bathroom. She stated further that she raised an alarm and went to knock on the door of Sahada Hudu, the wife of Kaka. But one of the interesting things that emerged from all that the committee heard from this other lady, Sadia Husseini, was that they thought that what she had to say was more probable, or they felt that what she had to say was more credible. I'm trying to go to exactly what they had to say about that. So it says, for the 10th paragraph, we, after careful examination of the evidence relating to the events preceding the death of Kaka, are convinced that the evidence as testified to by Sadia Hussein is more reasonably probable than the unsubstantiated evidence of Abewakas and Sahada Hudu, which are more speculative. We accordingly find that the death of Kaka was not directly linked to his social media activism. It is more probably a family feud. This is also supported by the testimony of Aminu Muhammad, a resident of EJURA. Now, at this point, let's move to the recommendations. And then we can bring in our guest who will be speaking to us on giving us the initial reactions to all that has happened. You know, this is an issue that has been in the public domain for a while, and a lot of people have had their thoughts and had something to say about it. But let's get to the recommendations. Okay, so the first recommendation, the committee recommends adequate compensation for the families of the two deceased persons. Adequate compensation must also be paid to other injured persons. 2, the committee recommends the immediate transfer of the District Police Commander of EJURA, DSP Philip Kojo Hammond, first, for his incompetence in handling the situation and for the fact that his relationship with the community seems to have been damaged beyond repair. That's recommendation number 2. 3, we further recommend the structural expansion of the EJURA police station and an increase in personnel. And then we recommend the removal of the EJURA Sechidumase Municipal Chief Executive, Honorable Mohammed Salisu Bamba, since his continuous presence as MCE would exacerbate the already tense security situation. And we're learning that the chief MCE for the area is actually not in contention again. And it is further recommended that the military establishment reviews the actions of the section on the ground led by Lieutenant Martinopoku Edusei for the inappropriate use of force and apply appropriate sanctions. All right, so these are just some of the recommendations that we're getting from the committee that probed the EJURA violence. Now let's get on to Zoom and bring in some of the people we're going to get their reactions. We have Adam Bona, who's a security analyst. We have Oliver Baka-Vormawo, who wants us to call him Osajo for Oliver Baka-Vormawo. And then we're also going to bring in the Sheikh Arimia, who is the spokesperson for the Chief Imam. Good morning to you all, and thank you for making time to speak with us on this very important issue.
Good morning. Good morning.
All right, so I'll take your initial thoughts, Adam Bona. What do you make of the recommendations? In fact, let's start with the findings first of all, before we go on to the recommendations. Some interesting findings there.
Yes, especially good morning and good morning to my colleague panelists. Good morning to them and your viewers. Yes, the findings, you realize that a lot of pack of lies were told. So you notice the military who, were at the hearing got indicted. According to the military, of which we all heard, the crowd, some members of the crowd, had with them firearms and they fired at the military to the extent that the military, those who were there actually alleged that it's possible or probably the probability that the bullet that killed these two people wasn't fired from their weapon, has been probably, call it, the committee said what they said was a pack of lies. And if you move from there, they also did mention in their findings issues to do with the carcass death, of which I thought the committee should not have gone to the extent of mentioning who might have killed Kaka and the family feud. But I must put across that the committee, I was probably a bit worried about the committee and how they were going about their work. But looking at it, looking forward, I would say that they've done quite a good job. So I must say Justice Kumsin and his people have done quite a good job. But there are aspects of it which I think they shouldn't have gone into, especially knowing how Kaka died and the fact that Kaka's death is a subject that is being dealt with in the courts. And so you have a committee that has probably, is alleging how Kaka might have died. And he didn't die through his activism. He died because there was a family feud. Well, I believe that all that will be proven in court. But I would have wished that the committee, knowing very well how he died, would have stayed away from this issue since they were not there to investigate Kaka's death. They were there to, even though one would say Kaka's death was a precursor to whatever unfolded. And also, I didn't see the regional minister was not indicted. I didn't see the police in the region. When the regional minister is not there per their structure, the security structure in the local area, you have the regional minister who is in charge of the region in terms of security. Then you have the police regional commander who is in charge. These two people were not indicted. I would have wished that these two people would have been mentioned at least, but they were not mentioned with regards to as if they did nothing wrong.
All right.
And so I worry because these people were their names or they were not mentioned.
All right. So I would be coming back to you, Mr. Bona, for more on this, but I'd also want to bring in Oliver Baka-Vomowo and the issue you raised, Mr. Bona, about the fact that, they strayed into an area that they probably shouldn't have, which is the circumstances leading to the death of Kaka and whose evidence was more probable. I want to bring you in, Baka-Vomowo. Let's look at the terms of reference of the committee. So, one, conduct a public inquiry into the circumstances that led to the unfortunate occurrences at EJURA in the Ashanti region on Tuesday, June 29, 2021. Inquire into any matter the committee considers incidental or reasonably related to the cause of the event and associated deaths and injuries. Wouldn't this be a justification for the committee wanting to investigate somehow or to some extent the death of Kaka?
Thank you, Israel. I think that if we are minded to give that broad interpretation to inquire into any matters related to how the people died, they might as well have investigated who gave birth to Kaka and whether Kaka's father is Kaka's father. I mean, it's straining absurdity for them, and particularly when you have a justice of the Court of Appeal sitting on a committee like this, to be doing a foray into matters as to who killed Kaka and the circumstances that led to Kaka's death. If you remember very well from the proceedings of the committee, the widow of Kaka had asked the committee clearly on record whether the committee was looking into who killed Kaka and the circumstances related to his death. The committee was very clear that they had no mandate to look into the matter. And so to do this, when we know very well that somebody or certain persons are in police custody, have been arraigned before court, have been remanded, and that there's an active murder investigation going on relating to the death of Kaka, one would think, even if you're not legally aware, that common sense would lead you into a direction whereby you'd make the determination that all that is necessary for our determination here is today is why did the people of EJURA come out to protest? They themselves say in the report that the reason why the youth did that was because of the incompetencies around the investigation into the attack on Kaka's life. Now, that is sufficient alone to coming out for people who said that the police are not doing enough regarding the reports that have been made to them on the death of a person of repute in the community. You have no business, zero business, going into determining whether or not the widow of Kaka, by the fact that she did not report the threat on the husband's life, for which reason she's not credible for some reason. How many of us have been in a situation and refused to report those instances to the police? Just a couple of days ago, Andrea Wusu, who's a socialite known as Ifeodo, has come out and said that the reason why she was not at the Face the Country demonstration was because she received threats on her life that people were going to pour acid on her at the demonstration. She chose not to attend the demonstration, but did not go on to report to the police. For so many reasons, we all understand that every time we go to the police, that our experiences with the police do not put us in a situation where we are confident that they take anything you tell them seriously, or two, they send you off to go and investigate and find the house of a suspect and then pay their fuel and transportation for them to go and arrest the person. And so the determination whether or not you wanted to report a threat on a life to the police is not a basis for determining whether or not a threat is credible or not credible. But beyond that, they themselves have gone on and said the reasons why the persons came out is one, that the police failed to act properly. Two, they provoked the people by sending the military van the water cannon to the cemetery where Kaka was being buried. They said that themselves. So I do not see what benefit it gives or what clarity it gives as to why the persons died and the violence that was unleashed on the community of EJURA by going on and saying that we have decided that this person's testimony to us is more credible, and for which reason. And they go on even to say that Kaka's death was a result of a family feud. A family feud. There's no finding that they make. There was a wider family feud that was happening within the family of Kaka. And so then how do you jump to a conclusion that there's a family feud going on? I'm baffled. And I think that this is an indictment on the integrity of the Justice of the Court of Appeal, himself, Kumsin. And I single him out particularly because at least one would expect that he's legally aware. And the fact that he would preside over a committee that would do this, for me, says a lot about a judiciary where a lot of people think that it is sensitive to political manipulation. Because I do not see whatever reason would lead them to this conclusion.
Oliver, I'd want to just state it clearly exactly what the committee said in its findings. It says it is more probably a family feud. So they were not conclusive.
Yeah, but it doesn't do any justice to anybody. If I say it is more probably he drank poison on his own, it doesn't take away the fact that I have thrown a bone out there which I have no basis to make that determination, right? So it doesn't achieve anything even if you fail to say it conclusively. But even before you say that, there's a statement they make much more conclusively before that, and I would hope that you would read that before they say it is more probably a family feud.
So is it still that section or the paragraph 10?
Yes, the same section.
Okay, after careful examination of the evidence relating to the events preceding the death of Kaka, are convinced that the evidence as testified to by Sadia Husseini is more reasonably probable than the unsubstantiated evidence of Abel Akas and Sahada Hudu, which are more speculative. We accordingly find that the death of Kaka is not directly linked to his social media activism. And that's
again,
the point where they say it
to
is
be
more
able to
probably
determine conclusively, as they claim to have done, that Kaka's death was not directly linked to social media activism, would have required a determination that it was not capable of doing. So this is conclusive language that they have already determined that Kaka's death was caused by persons other than people who were motivated by social media activism.
All right.
They have no basis for making that determination. And I am continuously baffled that they would go on to make that, even when they make rookie mistakes in the report. For instance, they describe another person who they claim, Miniratu Al-Hassan, who they claim provided collaborative evidence as a tenant in the house. She was not a tenant in the house. So you do not even know the quality of the persons whose testimony you decide to believe. She was not a tenant in the house. This is another person living in a neighbor. So again, I am trying to find the most charitable ways to describe the report. And because I found, one, that the report itself is structurally incompetent. You start the report off where we get a lot of information of who testified and what did what, without properly organizing the information. So you do not have information that relates to the context and circumstances that led to the incident of EJURA in one proper context. You do not have the failings and a detailed way in which they treat what they consider to be intelligence, or whether or not there's improper intelligence gathering, as to which would lead to the deployment of the military. They do not do those things. They do not come then to determine who, in fact, killed the individuals there. Because they themselves have talked about evidence where somebody is saying that it was related to pump action gun and locally manufactured weapons. Where during the hearings, a member of the committee says that he finds it much more plausible that the people shot themselves. There's no determination in the report where they treat that and properly discount that theory.
All right.
So in terms of organizing the report itself, it is structurally poor. Then the internal inconsistencies, and I think we'll get to that, between the findings and also the recommendations that they make, that they are internally inconsistent. So perhaps the mistake we make when we put certain persons on a committee, I don't know, is that these persons have never done this job before. And we are hoping that by reason of the fact that the person is the justice of the Court of Appeal, by some reason he has what it takes to be able to lead a committee and write a reasonably sound report. I don't think that this does justice to that belief at all.
Let me bring in Adam Bona. So staying on this paragraph 10, which appears to be quite contentious, do you also agree with Oliver that most of the things in there should have been left out? The committee should have stayed away from some of the conclusions they've come to in this paragraph?
Exactly. I think, especially when the issue is probably being dealt with by the courts, how Kaka died, who killed him, and especially when we are told that Kaka's brother is a key suspect in the case. What it means is that if Kaka, if the other person who is in custody, one of the guys in custody is a biological brother of Kaka, then it means that call it persist. And so I would have wished that they stayed away from it, but I'm not sure what the pronunciation or the pronouncement they've made will do to the case in court. I'm sure the judges are professional enough and the prosecutors are professional enough to deal with how Kaka died and who killed Kaka. So I would have wished that they stayed away from it, but unfortunately, they did. And, but I must say...
Yeah, are there any other of the findings that you find problematic?
Not that. I've reviewed it. I think apart from this, no.
Okay. So for you, you feel that they did quite a good job, except for a few exceptions?
Yes. I think they did a good job. I think they did a good job apart from some of this side. So obviously, we aren't going to have a report that would be foolproof. And so obviously, most especially indicting the military and, we all knew that, we all knew those who killed these young people. We all knew how they came in. This was captured on video. And if you notice, also they mentioned the video as, they put out there by your reporter, Erastus Asaridonko. Initially, some of us were probably very worried the way they were handling the issue. But looking forward, you can see, I would have expected that they would, in a way, I don't know whether it's acceptable to apologize, but it would have been good to apologize to Erastus, especially looking at how he had to put his own life on the line, go out there. And it is based on that video, the videos from the multimedia reporter in the region, that helped them to come to most of these conclusions and to indict some of these people who were there to lie. You also notice they also indicted the police in a way, because why do you send, call it a water cannon to a cemetery? Who does that? In modern day policing, who does that when the people are infuriated by the fact that one of them is dead? and you send the water cannon. And so there were a lot of inconsistencies. Those who were there to give testimony.
All right.
And I think they put it right.
Okay,
There
so
is right.
I'd want us to go to the recommendations then, and I would want to start with you, Mr. Bona. So let's go through the recommendations. Any one of them that you find particularly interesting?
I think all of the, okay, so for instance, what's the name? The police commander who is to be moved, and then the DCE who is to be dismissed. I want to see a further probe into what they did wrong. We need to know what they did wrong. A further probe into what they did wrong will help us establish, probably, because this committee's report shouldn't be a finality. And also there is an aspect of it that talks about body cameras. Some of us have been advocating for transparency in the way our security officers work. You go all over the world, and I think I've had this conversation with you, Israeli, in the past.
Yes.
Why police officers must have body cameras. And I am aware that the government and the Interior Ministry, the police, are in the process of procuring about 20,000 or more body cameras, in addition to procuring, dashboard cameras, so that if police officers step out there and they, engage citizens, these cameras are going to be giving feedback to the command and control center, so that all of these things, excesses, brutality that we see or we've seen in the past, will stop.
Right.
One other thing that they spoke about has to do with the expansion of EJURA, police station. They did also mention training of the MMDCs and RECSEC, those in charge of the RECSEC and MUSEC and the rest. You will realize what happened in Western region, where the minister in the Western region clearly jumped ahead of himself, forgetting that he's not a technocrat, he's solely a policymaker, and he's not a PRO for the Ghana Police, he's not a PRO for the Dental and Medical and Dental Council, started, allegedly saying he paid ransom to, it means that this regional minister is not well schooled when it comes to the security architecture of his own region, how he should deal with security and how the security must work. And so training is important. And you remember that Ayawaso Commission report, Justice Short Commission report, made these same recommendations, that these people must be trained. After 9/11, coordination, seamless operations of security officers, NADMO and all these people other places have done that. Yeah. We haven't done that. Yeah. So as far as I'm concerned, these are things that I want to see. And I'm also, at least I picked up information that the police, the FPU, the police form unit, we only have one in Accra. What it means is that if there are rioters in Tamale and other places, the police would find it difficult dealing with it. I am told that there's an expansion that is going to take place to make it 25. So Ashanti region would have 5, Greater Accra 3, Northern region 2, and the other regions will have 1. The other 15 police regions would have 1 each. So I think if all these things are implemented, this type of brutality, and also it will limit or reduce the interface between the military and the civilian population. The military should not be calling when people are picketing, when people are demonstrating. It is part of our democracy. And the military should only be called in when, they are violent, but people throwing stones and you fire live bullets at them. I think this, for me, was captured by the report, which I find satisfying, is right.
Okay, thank you. Now, Oliver, so you have an issue. You said you were going to tell us the inconsistencies between the findings and the recommendations. So you go at it now. So
let's first look at paragraph 24.
All right. Of the findings or the recommendations? Well, the findings, yeah.
Yes.
In relation to the response of the military personnel on June 29, we note from the evidence that immediately the personnel touched down, they started firing warning shots. Contrary to the evidence of the GOC, Central Command, which was to the effect that they gave a verbal warning, which was ignored before the warning shots began.
So first of all, here you have an incident where they are saying particularly that the persons who testified before them, the military personnel, lied. That what they did was that they came in, immediately they touched down, they started firing shots, right? Now they chose to describe those live ammunition then as warning shots. But then they go on then in 25, that they did not consider these acts of the youth an extreme provocation that required the firing of live ammunition into the crowd. Then in 26, they say that the firing of live ammunition achieved the intended purpose of dispersing the rioters. At no point should the committee be suggesting that the firing of live ammunition into the crowd had any particularly militarily relevant value or purpose. Because if you do that, you water down the seriousness of the language you're using to describe the military action. And this is one of the things which I think that we should pay careful attention to, because the devil is in the detail. At one breath, when you find no particular justification for the use of military weapon, you can't then go on and say that it achieves its intended purpose. There's no purpose to the firing of military weapon that should be excused in this particular matter. Then you go on in the recommendation, in the last recommendation, and recommend that the establishment of a sports and other recreational facilities in EJURA under the Zongo Development Fund to rechannel the energies of the youth. Again, the energies of the youth is not a problem in this entire report, right? Nobody is complaining that we lack Azuma Nelsons or football players. And that's for which reason we don't know how to apply our energy. When you have said categorically that the reason why the youth were onto the street was, one, because of the police inaction in investigating properly the death of Kaka, and you call it the single act of provocation of deploying the vans to the cemetery. What is the connection between that and asking for a sports facility to be established for the youth to rechannel their energies? So I don't know how, to what extent the establishment of a stadium, for instance, would solve the problems of ineptitude of our security sector here. But secondly, they go on and talk about failings of intelligence gathering, failings of intelligence sharing, for which reason we are made to understand that there's a whole improper way in which intelligence is dealt with completely in this entire thing. But then the only recommendation we see is that we should bring them to Ghana Armed Forces Staff College for them to be trained well. We do not get any proper sanctions that are determined for these failings. The fact that persons have been killed and have been murdered, there's no recommendations regarding persons who should be prosecuted at all in this report. So even though we know, and even when the police use there's improper use of force by the Ghana Police Service, persons related to that have been indicted and properly prosecuted. So if the same has happened in this case, there's no talk about prosecutions whatsoever in this entire report. I do not understand it. Secondly, you cannot claim that we should pay due compensation to certain individuals without having concluded completely that there's an entire negligence or negligent failing that resulted in their death. It's basic law or basic negligence that the only reason why you pay compensation for somebody's death is that you are wholly responsible for the death of the person. Now, if the actions then result in both criminal consequences and civil consequences, you can't only talk about the civil, which is then to compensate them, and leave out the criminal aspects of what you have done. Let's go on further.
Are you suggesting that the committee decided to stay away from indicting anybody because if they did, or to justify the compensation, then would have meant that it would lead to some criminal proceedings?
I think that absolutely that. I don't know their motivations for leaving that out. And I think Adam has also talked about the fact that they go on the low-hanging fruit, dismiss the MCE, transfer the police, the DCOP at the police station. I think those are low-hanging fruits. Those are how they say in terms of punitive measures. I am still at pains as to why we consider transfer in any particular regard as a failure to handle a particular situation, and all the lapses we've talked about, how a transfer is considered as a punitive measure. Transfers in the normal police work are part of how police administrative functions. And when we continue to treat a transfer as a punitive measure, one, we lower down expectations of what, or that we lower down the bar as to what improper police conduct entails. Two, we treat a transfer, which is a part of the administrative functioning, as a punitive measure on our police institutions. And that's why you see consistently in our public service that wherever persons have done something or have taken certain actions, the way in which politicians seek to discipline them is to transfer them out. And this is the line which this report continues to toe, which I find very disappointing. They go on and say that the NCC should educate, intensify its public education in relation to the rights, obligations, and civic responsibilities of the people of EJURA. I for one do not see what role or what expectations they have of the NCC, or whether or not they understand the NCC's mandate in relation to the incidents of EJURA. I don't see in the findings where they see that it is because the persons have poor education and for which reason the NCC must come in. It seems to me that's a collection of recommendations that are ill-justified that have been bundled together. We talk about gear for the military, and I would think, for me, it seems to be the most substantive recommendation they make here. But even that, you can say, as Adam has mentioned, that you can go back to the Ayawaso report and take that and plan that in. Because of the credibility of the Ayawaso report, it seems more plausible to me that they have brought this in here without making any clear determination or finding as to why that is necessary in this particular case, and just dumped it in here to give some gravitas to the report, which it clearly does not have.
All right, so for you, you have a problem. I mean, isn't there anything good at all coming from this report as far as you are concerned?
As far as I'm concerned, I see a lot of tentativeness in naming the beast. One, they say what's one thing that everybody has been thinking, that the use of violence by the military was completely unjustified. And then what? To say that enough must have a particular resonance in your recommendations, which it does not have. So it is not enough to give persons, a sniff of the bone without revealing the full meat. This is where I have the biggest problem. Right. That if we become content in throwaway comments here and there, would have failed to do justice to the totality of the report, where there's a complete disconnect between making a significant finding that the military essentially just went there and shot people and killed them and maimed them, and making no recommendations that are, carefully weighted to the gravity of that finding. This is where my problem lies.
Okay, now, Mr. Bona, so you have you've already stated that you've seen some positives or some good things about this report. I want to believe that once we see these recommendations being implemented, it can bring some closure to at least some of the people who have been involved in this, correct?
Yes. Compensation is one thing we need to consistently push because as we speak, some of the dead persons were called them breadwinners of their families. And so they are no longer there. Who's taking care of their families, we don't know. So I think as quickly as possible, the authorities, the powers that be, should put themselves together and compensate the victims' family, that's the dead, their families. And for those who got permanent injuries and those who have other forms of injuries, I think there has to be a determination to quickly pay these people, give them whatever compensation that they, would have to give them. And I'm sure one of them got his leg amputated. What it means is that he will not be able to do a lot, in that situation. So such persons, there have to be long-term plans for such a person. Once there is an admission of guilt that they were, what happened shouldn't have happened, then I'm believing that compensation would not be adequate enough to bring back the dead and, take away their pain. But it could be to assuage their pain, to reduce the impact of their pain. I think my colleague on the other side mentioned sending the officers back to, the Armed Forces College to be trained. I think we should rather look for a better place to send them. And I am saying this because it is an institution that is owned by the military. So they should have been trained in the first place, before being deployed. And so if after committing this, after this incident, we are sending them back there, then I don't see what difference that would bring. And so I would have rather recommended maybe they are sent somewhere else, which I'm not too sure where they would have to be sent to for proper schooling and proper training with dealing with crowd control and their temperament and how to deal with civilians because you don't hear Ghana Armed Forces go into Lebanon, and they went to Lebanon and they gunned down people. Even though we know the situation in Lebanon, we know the situation in those countries, Sudan and the rest. But you have Ghana military in our own backyard. When these things happen, sometimes some officers will take the loss. And I'm privy to the fact that the military high command has dealt with some of these incidents. But we want to see more going forward, so at the end of the day, we don't have civilians suffering in the hands of.
On the issue of training that they recommended, they're actually making reference to the training of RegSec, MUSEC, and DISEC officials in the Ashanti region, and in conflict and crisis management at the Ghana Armed Forces Training Command and Staff College at least once every year. So with regards to the troops themselves, what I see indicated here, that's on recommendation 7, recommend the development of a joint standard operative procedure, SOP, for military police operations, including roles for indispensable allied agencies like the National Investigations Bureau, NADMO, Ghana National Fire Service, National Ambulance Service, etc. But I mean, I'm sure you'd agree that the members of RegSec, MUSEC, and the rest, it would be good to give them some training at the Ghana Armed Forces Command and Staff College.
Well, yes, it would be good to get them some training, but I would want to know why the Ghana Armed Forces and Staff College.
All right.
I'm curious. I just want to know because Ghana is not at war. I'm sure there are other courses they teach. So I would have wished that instead of sending them to the Ghana Armed Forces and Staff College, you send them to the police academy, because the police are supposed to be trained to deal with civilians. Soldiers and so I would want a situation where these people, because what happened in the Western region, what happened in the Ashanti region, what happened in, what do you call it, what's the name? EJURA, Dumase area, in all this. So if you send them there, I want to know, I know there are other courses that would have to teach, conflict resolution and all that. But what would that amount to? I want to see how these people interface with the police, because the first point of call is not the armed forces. And so I don't know why. I don't know, because maybe my good friend Vladimir and Chidanso is there. I don't know whether that is the reason why it's recommended that they go there. But I would rather recommend that they are taken to the police academy, because when we have issues and we disagree, we go to the police station. The DCEs, MCEs are supposed to be interfacing with the police first before the military. I want to know why that recommendation, but
it could be that there's a special, he's aware of a special cause, Dr. Vladimir Chudanso is aware of a special cause that could cater to that. But thank you very much, Mr. Bona. I'll come to you, Oliver, and I want to end on the bit about adequate compensation. How do you compensate for someone's death?
I think that when we are thinking about lives that have been lost, and this is their first recommendation, obviously, naturally, justice comes in so many forms, right? For instance, the Kaka family themselves have been pursuing a different form of justice, which is seeing some religious relief by taking the audience of the National Chief Imam. Here, they're talking about monetary values for the deceased persons and the persons who've lost their lives. It's one of the ways in which courts try to evaluate and do that work. And I don't know what they have in mind or who they are directing that particular recommendation towards. It's not clear from this report.
All right.
But beyond that, one of the things I've said is that as a package, and part of the package is criminal prosecution. That criminal prosecutions and the feeling that somebody has been held criminally responsible for the loss of a loved one goes a long way in the same regard. But thirdly, we should not forget that what we saw was violence on a community, and that the community itself must heal. There's nothing in this report that takes into totality the pain of the community. So it's not by isolating one or two individuals who died or got injured, but the persons who are to flee from their life and seeing an expressive arm of the state, which is the military, shoot live ammunition towards them. That is the psychological trauma that this report doesn't deal with at all. And we should not make light of that. So that's one of the poverties in the recommendations around money, and that we can pay the people away. And we have done this a number of times, right? Like what happened with the stadium disaster. We thought that when we put money together, the pain of people would have healed. And when we failed to prosecute or properly, we failed to secure the criminal punishment for persons affiliated with that, we just moved on. And I think that is something we need to think about.
All right.
And this is one of the reasons why I am disappointed again in this idea of, what is lacking here is training. And like every time that persons caught in such violence against our people or civilians are determined, we come up again with this recommendation of just go and train them. It's a cop-out, to be honest, in my personal opinion.
All right.
And I am disappointed to see this repeat itself again.
All right. Thank you very much, Oliver Bakavomo, who's a convener of Fix the Country, and to you, Adam Bona, for joining us for this conversation. I'm sure we'll continue to have these conversations, and you would continue to have your takes on it. But thank you very much for joining us for this morning.